Shalom, Hebrews. It's a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. And it's a whole lot of Hebrews. Got a whole lot of history going on and a whole lot of understanding about our history that basically don't come from the Tanakh. See, it's two histories. It's two groups of people that we're dealing with. See, when you're dealing with Hebrew history, you're going to have to also include those Babylonian scribes that took our heritage over. The Sephardims, the Sephardi Jews. The Hebrew word for Sephardi is Sephardim. That's 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 24. The king of Assyria placed the Babylonian scribes in our land, and in 588 BC, like 134 years later, we as a Hebrew people abandon our heritage to them. You see, there's no 10 lost tribes, so let's go back and establish that. And then I want to establish the fact that, the people who occupied our land, what I'm saying? It was a bunch of people that occupied our land. And we basically had to get on down after we broke the covenant and said we wasn't gonna do the law that Moses gave us. You see, if your history don't line up with this, then you're not teaching Hebrew Israelite history, but you are teaching Jewish history. You see, it's a difference between Jewish history and Hebrew Israelite history. You see, the whole Hebrew nation abandoned their covenant for Egyptian religion. You see, we went into Africa in the book of Jeremiah, but first let's establish that it wasn't no 10 lost tribes, because if it wasn't no 10 lost tribes, then all the Hebrews went into Africa in the book of Jeremiah, but except that tenth, that less than 1% that was taken to Babylon, that come back and that was destroyed. You see, I got proof they was destroyed. You see, they was destroyed by some professional killers. Alexander's general, the Seleucids, the Lycimus, and the Ptolemies. Them was some professional killers. And I got proof that the Lycimus and the Ptolemies were undercover Jews. You see what I'm saying? If you go research Philo history, you'll see that Philo and Lycimus was brothers. And Lycimus was one of Alexander's generals. So it's a whole lot going on. A whole lot going on. You see, during that Jesus time, when Jesus would have came into Egypt, he would have seen white pharaohs. He would have seen pharaohs and images of white folks. You see what I'm saying? Because the white folks had took Egypt over in 332 BC. And when Jesus went to head there, that's who he would have seen. Them would have been the people that, he would have seen that controlled Egypt. Okay, let's go back to when we broke the covenant, because that's what this is really about. How Hebrews be teaching all other kind of history besides what's in the Tanakh. In the Tanakh, after you read it from the beginning to the end, it's important to know dates and timelines, so you just don't be reading a book and you don't know when these events kicked off or when these events started. It's a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. Okay, the whole book from Genesis kind of like, give you the foundation of, how everything started. And, as you read forth, it go down to Abraham. We all know that our father Abraham, the Hebrew, dwelled in Mesopotamia. Uh, uh, Hebrews, Hamites, everybody lived in Mesopotamia. So, that wasn't no big thing. And then how the prophet Abraham was told to leave them parts and go back towards Africa. And there he will be given some land. Basically the Amorites. The Amorites had a covenant before we Hebrews did. The prophet Ezekiel go into the sins of Jerusalem. You see, when we come out of the Egypt during the Exodus and we was going into the promised land, we didn't get rid of them people. We didn't get rid of the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Havites, or none of them Canaanite kids. All of them had Tazarat on them. Tazarat is the form of leprosy. They had mixed with them Raphalims and them Nephilims way long time ago, and they had produced a wicked civilization. Basically the Creator kind of like saved them Amorites that was wallowing in their blood, and the Creator took them and straightened them up and gave them civilization. And out of that, they turned wicked and produced Sodom and Gomorrah, and that was destroyed. But them people wasn't destroyed. Them Amorites and so forth was still around. Okay, Abraham go to the promised land. He had his dealings with them, and then he had his son, you know, Ishmael, Isaac, and then from Isaac, our lineage come from, because the promise was given to Abraham that his descendants would inherit the land of Canaan, and from Isaac you get our father Jacob, who the Creator changed his name to Israel. That's why come it's important for us to reclaim our original name, Israel, because that's a name that the Creator gave us. You see what I'm saying? Even though we abandoned our heritage to them Babylonian scribes and they took on our name, we still can reclaim our name because we are the original owners of that name. But anyway, Jacob had his sons, and then they went down into Egypt, and then we morphed into a great and mighty nation, and then we come out of Egypt and we was going into the promised land. That's where you get the book of Exodus. It tells you, our journey and the problems that we had, you know, dealing with the prophet Moses and how we didn't believe, and how, the the events, had to go about how we wandered around for 40 years in the desert until we lost that crew that worshiped the Egyptian religion. You see, also, let me note this, but before I get into showing that there's no 10 lost tribes, the Egyptians tricked us also out of our covenant when they gave Joseph Asenath. And out of the union of Asenath come Manasseh and Ephraim, and how Ephraim descendants like Jeroboam did the Queen of Heaven worship the whole time. And when they killed King Josiah around about 621 BC, them Egyptians, after he cleaned the land up of Egyptian worship, then we went back to the Egyptian religion and went into Africa and lost everything. That's how we got here in America. But let's establish no 10 lost tribes. All right, you go to Second Chronicles chapter 30. This is written, chapter 30. This is written around about 715 BC. This is 7 years after the Assyrians placed those Sepharvims and took those fighting tribes away that would help them against the Babylonians. Prophet Isaiah had prophesied that, that we, us Hebrews, the Egyptians, and the Assyrians would be united, and it would be a highway from Egypt to Assyria and back. It's called the satire history of Egypt. But anyway, in 715 BC, King Hezekiah had all the tribes with him. And as you read Second Chronicles 30, you'll see that he sent the letter to all Israel, and then as you read, you'll see that he said, um, 30 verse 6, so the post went with the letters from the king and his princes throughout all Israel and Judah, according to the commandment of the king, saying, ye children of Israel, return, ye children of So the post went with the letters from the king and his princes throughout all Israel and Judah, in according to the commandment of the king, saying, ye children of Israel, turn again unto the Elohim Yah of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return unto the remain of you that are escaped out of the hands of the kings of Assyria. So that showed that, the Hebrews basically escaped the Syrians. And then as you read down, remember this is in 715 BC. This is 7 years after the Syrians, took the fighters. And as you read down, you get to Second Chronicles 30, verse 10, you'll see that he mentioned, Manasseh, Ephraim, Zebulun, and then verse 11, Asher, Manasseh, Zebulun, and then all those that's not mentioned during King Hezekiah time gonna be mentioned during his great grandson time, King Josiah. But here goes some more under King Hezekiah. For a multitude of people, even Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, Zebulun, hadn't cleansed themselves, and they came to the Passover dinner. And also, let's take note that in 715 BC, when King Hezekiah told the Israelite nation and peoples in the northern kingdom to come to Passover dinner, well, these people who inherit our heritage, if you go to Second Kings chapter 17, 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 24, you'll see that word Sepharavim. You'll see that word Sepharavim. That's the Hebrew word for Sephardi. That's kind of like the only word in the Bible, or the only name that didn't just get translated, that they left it just like it was. Sepharavim, a lot of people read right over that and don't know that that's the Sephardi Jews right there. That's the Sephardi Jews. And from the Sephardi Jews, you get the Sephardic and the Sepharidims. Where those people was placed in our land in 722 BC, and under King Hezekiah in 715 BC, they came to the Passover dinner. They came to the Passover dinner. All right, they came to the Passover dinner. All right, all right. That's gonna be Second Chronicles chapter 30, verse 25. And all the congregation of Judah with all the priests and the Levites and the congregation that come out of Israel and the strangers that come out of the land of Israel that dwelled in Judah. All right, that's going to be those Sephardi folks coming to the Passover dinner. They had been in our land 7 years. We didn't do nothing to them. The northern kingdom was still slipping on the Egyptian religion, since Jeroboam days, since 931 BC. Okay, the tribes of Israel there, 715 BC. All right, so when you get to King Josiah, you dealing around about 640 BC. And he dealing with the tribes of Israel. And like I said, those that's not mentioned under King Hezekiah, his great granddaddy be mentioned, with King Josiah. That's King Hezekiah's great grandson. And then as you read down, you'll see that he dealing with all Israel. And so did he in the cities of Manasseh, Ephraim, Simon, unto Naphtali, with their mattucks round about. All right, so then that's in 640 BC. So all the tribes still there. So all them tribes would be there when the Babylonians came around about 595 BC. You see, they would be there. And that's when we get to the book of Jeremiah. And in the book of Ezekiel, in the book of Jeremiah, deal with the Babylonian captivity. And it's a known fact that the Hebrews were still there. Everybody kind of like had to run to Judah because the enemies was coming from the east. They was coming from the east, and they was running us all into Africa, because we had said in the book of Jeremiah that this around about 588 BC, all the tribes still there from King Hezekiah and Josiah days. The Babylonians will be the next enemy we will face off with. And they had destroyed Assyria. Assyria was destroyed in 612 BC. They was wiped off the face of the earth. Those Hebrews that was there had a chance to come home because the Assyrians had set the Necho land. It's a group of pharaohs. Necho was land was put on by the Assyrians. That's when the Assyrians kind of like the first people to conquer Egypt. And take them over. And then the Persians came. And no, then the Babylonians came, then the Persians came, then the Greeks, then the Romans. But in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 44, verse 15, 16, 17, and 18, we told the Creator that we wasn't going to do the law no more, and that we was going back into Egypt because the Egyptians had killed King Josiah and put his son on the throne in the land of wheat kings, and we went back to the Egyptian worship. We said because the Babylonians was coming into the land is the reason why we wasn't doing Egyptian religion. That all our troubles we was having is because we wasn't worshiping the Egyptian religion. And here it is, chapter 44, verse 15, 16, 17, and 18. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burned incense unto other gods, and that stood by a great multitude, even all the people that dwelled in the land of Egypt and Petros, answered Jeremiah, saying, As for the word that thou hast spoken to us in the name of the Elohim, we will not hearken unto thee, but we will certainly do whatsoever thing go forth out of our own mouth to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our princes, our kings, in the streets of Jerusalem, and in the cities of Judah. For then had we plenty of food, and were well, and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things. Okay, we was chased off the land for that. We was chased into Africa, and when that was said, we was basically on our way into Africa. If you read Jeremiah 44, verse 2, you will see that it says, This said the Elohim of hosts, the Yah of Israel, ye have seen all the evil that I have brought upon Jerusalem, and upon all the cities of Judah. And behold, this day they are a desolation, and no man dwelleth therein. The millions, the 99%, went into Egypt, went into Africa. All of us, we had to get on down. That's what the book of Lamentations is about. Jeremiah wrote, and the troubles and the difficulties we had. We was wet and nasty, and we was tore up, and we went into Egypt, Africa. The millions, when that 1% was taken to Babylon. You know what I'm saying? That 1%, and it's to show you that Israel was among the exiles that was taken to Babylon. You go to Ezra. Israel name mentioned right here. It tell you that the people, Ezra 2 tell you about the people that was taken from Bethel. Bethel was part of the northern kingdom. It was 223 of them, but the children of Israel was part of the Babylonian captivity. If you go to Israel mentioned here, the children of Israel. You know what I'm saying? All throughout Ezra, the children of Israel mentioned, and Judah. And then when you get to the book of Nehemiah, he straight out tell you that Israel was there among the Babylonian captivity. They had it so bad that when they come back from Babylon, because the enemies was everywhere, living in all the other parts of our inheritance, that everybody had to live in Judah, and then they had to take a pool to see who would come to Jerusalem and try to help, build a wall and, reestablish, what we had left, that 1%. And, Ezra, Nehemiah 11 go into that. It talk about, the children of Israel, and how, everybody lived in Judah, even Israel, but how mostly Judah lived in the cities. Okay, so the Israelites didn't go into captivity during Assyrian times like that Jewish myth go. You see, that's why I say a lot of y'all be teaching Jewish history, because the Jewish myths, you see, they had to try to lose the tribes, and keep the tribes lost, because our heritage was blotted out. And a lot of you Hebrews believe in that history. You believe in the history that the Jews wrote. And that's going to be every book outside the Tanakh, because we only had time to write Tanakh history. We only had time to write Tanakh history before the door shut on us. So you Hebrews just teaching a history outside the Tanakh history is going to be teaching Jewish history. I don't care what book it is or how fantastic it sounds. Some of the books even mention in the Tanakh that we didn't have or don't have, they took and tried to recreate them books. You see, you're dealing with Babylonian scribes. When you're reading history outside the Tanakh, those going to be those Sephardi, the Sephardims that came from Cyprus. You see, they wasn't nothing but some slick Amorites. It wasn't nothing but the Amorites got their heritage back. The Amorites ain't nothing but some slick, undercover, Hamites because Canaan was a son, you know what I'm saying, of Ham. You know what I'm saying? He was in that lineage. And they Tazarete kinfolks controlled Babylon. Them Babylonian scribes, the Amorites. And when they was brung back to the promised land under the name Sepharvaim, where they kept records